Right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to try and zoom through something today. We're going to be looking at connecting, as we say, to postcodes.io API using Flow. This is something which I did in my org, and then I kind of shared it in a couple of groups, the idea, and some other people were quite interested. So we were asked to do this. A little bit about me. Standard admin for a small charity. We mainly use Experience Cloud and we kind of connect volunteers and teachers so people can go in and talk about their career journeys. I'm one of the super mum, the noisy lot, used to be a mental health worker and then changed to Salesforce about 6 years ago. 4 certs at the moment, hoping for a fifth one soon. And 5 times Ranger just because it's fun. So it's my kind of LinkedIn on the right and email if you want, because I do enjoy doing this flow stuff. So first of all, what's an API? This took me ages to work this out. It's quite confusing, really. But an API is actually a set of rules that kind of allows rules and protocols that allows two systems to communicate. I guess the most common ones, or the HTTP requests, are get information from an external service, which is what we're using in this case, or post information to an external system to update it. So those are kind of two probably the most common ones. There's a huge variety of APIs available. Some are free. I'm using a free one at the moment that requires no authentication, but there are loads that require payment and authentication. That's particularly the case if you're sending personal, private information between two systems. The language I do think can sometimes confuse, and it definitely confused me. So you don't have an API. People say, "Oh, I've got 4 APIs in my org," but you don't really. You use APIs to connect various systems. So one way I've heard about it is the API is a doorway. Sometimes it has a key. Sometimes it's unlocked, like the one we're using, and you either go in and nick stuff, such as the data, or you go and dump stuff, such as the data which you want to leave into there. And it can also be confused, and this came out recently. I think Chris mentioned it with the date thing that came from Salesforce. This confused people talking about the API versions. I think what they were mainly talking about there was the versions of your code and your flows. So those go up one every release. At the moment, we're on 63. We'll be on 64 when the new release comes out. That's kind of, I think, was one of the things that particularly confused people. It definitely confused me. So our use case, we're talking about a charity which stores contact details for its clients, including their addresses. But they want to kind of report on the impact at a ward level, which is something you can get off your postcode. But the contacts, they don't know their ward level. I haven't got a clue which ward I'm in, and a manual searching of that will take ages. So it's not something that you can particularly do with ease. And I use a story. As a project manager, I want to sort data by wards so that I can better understand a report on local program impact. It's always good to do your user story, good kind of BA practice, really. And the outcome we're going to do is a flow-based solution, and we're going to send the postcode of a newly created or updated contact via an API, and it's going to retrieve the ward information and update the record accordingly. The bits that we need to do, I'm assuming a couple of things. One is that you have the relevant fields set up on your objects. We're not going to do a build along here because it's going to be a bit speedy, but this is things you would have. So you'd have your fields set up and you'd have access to some of the endpoint documentation. So this is where I get my postcodes, and that just tells me some of the criteria I need for the setup. We're going to create a name credential, build a record triggered flow, and if needed, assign permissions. So as a standard user, you can do this anyway. I get a little bit sketchy on here, but you might need to do that. Okay, so let's go. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our setup and we're going to search for named credentials. This comes up here like this, and we're going to click the black arrow and create a new legacy. Now, this named credential is basically where we store in Salesforce where we want to go to use this API. And the idea is that you put it here so you don't hard code it into your flows and your code and things like that. So I'm going to label it as my postcode API. And then I'm going to put in my URL. So this is the endpoint. This is like the first bit of the where my API is. And if I look at my documentation, you'll see that they have this information available. It takes a little bit of reading, but basically it's the first part of the URL. Luckily, on this one, I don't have to fill in any of this because, as I say, it's not an authenticated API that we're using. There's other people out there that are much better at explaining how you do the authentication side. This is why I've chosen the easiest one available for you. So I simply have to put in the URL and then I click save. And that's my name credential done. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build flows. So as I said, this is when somebody creates a new contact or they update the postcode of a contact, and it's going to basically send that postcode to the postcodes.io site and ask a question and say, can you tell me what the ward is, please? It's going to send it back to me. Then I'm going to put it onto that record and update that record so it has that information. So let's start with a new flow. So I'm doing a new flow. I'm going to start from scratch. And I want to choose a record triggered flow because it's a change in the record that causes this to kick off. Do you know I'm going to stick with auto layout? So the object we're working on is the contact object. And I'm going to do it when a record is created first. So I want to put some conditions in first of all, and this is just going to be that the field is not null. Somebody could create a contact, not fill in the postcode, and I obviously don't want to kick off this automation where I can. You try and make it as efficient as possible within the entry criteria. So I'm going to look for the right field. For me, it's mailing zip postal code. Is null, false. And it's basically saying there is something within there. And then this is a key one here. Down the bottom, we want to include run asynchronous path. Basically, Salesforce won't really allow you to do these call outs immediately within the record triggered flow. You have to run it asynchronously because otherwise the Salesforce systems have to sit and wait as it makes the calls and waits for a response. So you have to run it asynchronously. That means that you might have to wait a few seconds for it to actually run through. If you want to do something more immediately, you can use, for example, a screen flow where pressing a button can kick off that call and you can get the data back. But as this is record triggered, I need it to be asynchronous. Okay, so that's my first thing. So I can look at my instructions here. Okay, now we're going to make the HTTP call out. So in this pathway, I'm going to click on the plus. I'm going to choose an action. And right at the bottom here, you have create HTTP call out. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to open up for me. And this is, first of all, my external service. So this is basically saying, it's kind of which name credential do I want to use? So I'm just going to simply put in, I'm going to follow their naming convention. So API. You would put in your descriptions, but we're not going to for speed. And then I'm going to choose that name credential, which I've just made. So that puts kind of the base URL in for me. Now here is my action. So this is the kind of thing that happened. So action postcode API. And I have to choose my method. So we mentioned earlier how you can get or post information. So here I'm getting information because I'm giving them my postcode and I want to get some information back. So I'm going to choose a get method and I have to choose my URL path. So because a site can often have multiple APIs, you've got to kind of point it to the correct one. So here I need to find my document, the right one. I don't know what I did. Give me a second, sorry. It's here. It's this here. So I'm going to take the last part. I'm going to paste it in here, but I need to make a change. So it says here to add path variables in curly brackets. So if you think when I'm doing the contact record, I want the postcode that I've written in to be the one that gets kicked into here. So I'm just going to put curly bracket here, and that gives me my variable that I can then enter to in a later date. Sorry. Okay, once I click out of that, it's going to ask me another question. It's going to say, well, what type of data is that postcode? And postcode is a string. It's kind of a mixture of numbers and letters, so it's a string. Now I'm going to click next. This is, I don't know, it's a few releases old. You used to have to use an example response about the information you get back. Now you can just connect for schema, which makes it really easy. I'm going to choose that one and click next. And it's going to basically say, right, give me a postcode that you know works. And then I'm going to return to you the data that I can return to you. So I'm going to chuck in a postcode here. Click connect. And it's given me a response. So it's given me a response of all the details that this API can give me. And it automatically detects the data structure. So it knows, for example, that Eastings is an integer. It is worth double checking this, as it sometimes can get it wrong, but in general, they're mostly right. So that's all fine for me. So I'm going to click save. There we go. And then there's one final thing I have to do, which is here. And this is basically saying, well, where do I get the postcode from that I'm sending to the API? So I have to click into the value. I have to choose my record. And then I have to find my postal code. Click it in there. Oh, I've got to get the name. And postcode. Yeah. Done. And that's my action done. Now, an important thing to do here is to add a fault path. And the reason is sometimes when you do this API call, either if you think the data might have been a mashed postcode, it may be something that's been put in incorrectly, lots of different things that could happen. So you add yourself a fault path. And I would probably recommend adding a little email there. So I would say you potentially email the admin and say, this person tried to put in this postcode and it didn't work. Or it could be maybe to the user who, I think the user who did it. But you need a way to follow up on that when there are particular errors. So I'm just going to leave that blank at the moment. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update my triggering record. So if we look, new post record has been created and it's been started. I'm then going to send that postcode to the API and get some data back. I can then update the record using the information that's been returned to give me the ward. So here, I'm going to put update contact with ward. Already I use a contact record that triggered the flow. And then the field that I want to set is my ward. And this is where we get our value. So if I click into value, you'll see one of the actions here is the output from that send postcode API that I've just created. So I click into that, you get this 2XX, no idea why, but it says 2XX. Click into that. And then I click into the result. And then here are all the different things that I get back. So I'm going to choose the ward here. And if I quickly go back to the documentation, you'll often find this with the postcodes. If I go to this, the postcode schema here, here is a reference that tells me all the different things that I get back and what they were. So this is how I knew I want to choose that admin ward. It tells me I can get from this one, the Eastings, the Northings, longitude and latitude are obviously commonly used ones. And for me, I want this one, the admin ward, which is the electoral ward. Okay, and that is it. He says, double checking. Yes, save. Right, so this is on create, update, ward on contact. Okay. I'm going to save that. I'm going to activate it. Now, there's one quick thing I want to do here. As I said, so it's you can't kind of use is new and is changed. in one thing for this, for what we're doing here. So I have to create a second flow. This one does the on create, and then I have to make another one that does on update. So all I need to do here is go save as a new flow, call it on update. Like that. So I'm going to save as a new flow, and I'm going to make a couple of little changes to it. So I'm going to go into the start criteria and edit. I'm going to choose when a record is updated. And here, I'm going to say is changed true. Yep. That's it, save. And that's it done. So the final bit, the permissions. As I say, on a standard user, and you'll probably find on a lot of profiles, you have the permission API enabled, already ticked. But if needed, you can go into permission sets, and you can add that and then add it to the people that use it. The administrator, you'll obviously have access to that as well. So let's show this in action. So we're going to go into contacts. We're going to create a new contact. So sign in. Just make sure I've actually switched them both on. Sorry. Yeah, both activated. Good. So new contact, and I'm going to add a postal code here. So add some U is one that I know works. I'm going to click save. I'm going to go to my details. You see that the ward's not there at the moment. So we say it runs asynchronously. So you sometimes have to do a refresh just to be able to see it. And there we go. So it's now done the send out of that postcode, and it's returned the ward that we need. To show the change, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to edit it. Click save. Probably have to do refresh again. There we go, and it's changed my ward. So here, as you can see, this is our way that we can add various extra bits of information about geography for us that we can get from this API here. We can do it on a new creation, and we can do it on an updated contact record. And the principle is still the same for other APIs. The bits where you may have more complexity around the authentication that you may need to do, and that involves putting various tokens in. So when you have that first conversation with the external service, you're basically saying you have permission to use it and get various bits of data. I would say there's other better places than me to be able to get that type of information. And I think, there you go, zoom through that.
Simon, I don't think I've ever seen anybody build a flow with, well, everything so fast. That was cool. What did we all think to that? We all going to go and integrate postcodes now with our orgs? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You upset Yvonne though because you typed them in lowercase. You made a
Luckily,
twitch.
well, yes. So luckily, this API can handle kind of.
Oh, that's why you were doing
There's
it
no.
right,
It
Simon.
was all on
It was
purpose,
on
Yvonne.
purpose
It was
to
a
show
higher
it would
level thing.
work.
But as you can see, it's a very valid point, about, and sometimes you do have to double check the information, how it goes in. So this one can handle, you saw I didn't put a space in it, and it was lowercase. So it's not the standard way you would expect a postcode to be, but it was able to do that.
Great. And Debbie, who at PSPA, who I know you helped with this, said it was really good, and her colleagues are really over the moon with it. Paul asked a question. He said, "Can you say again why you can't have a on create or update flow?"
So I spent an hour trying to sort this earlier today, Paul. It's really annoying, but when you have it's just something that's it seems is not allowed. I was trying to do it with all within one flow, but it just blocks it and you can't activate it. So you can't have the you can't say if it is a new record or if it is changed, then do this type of thing. So that's why I have to create two separate ones. And I thought that is changed would work for a created because in a way there's nothing and there is, but that's not the case. So yes, you need two flows for it, annoyingly, but it's very easy to make that second one, as you see.
You could try, Simon, a create date is changed false. That should act as the same as is new.
Ooh.
That was a hack that somebody told me the other day, and Chris is nodding, and I'm going to take that.
So if somebody can put that in chat,
Yeah.
if you can put that in
So
chat, I'd
basically,
love to know that.
it's create date is changed false
Brilliant.
because
As long as you have access to in change is changed in that context, it should work.
yeah.
Thank you. Well,
So,
use that method then if you don't want two flows. I like that idea. Thank you.
let me write that down. Sure, that's right. False. Yeah, somebody told me that the other day, and I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah."
I
And to be
tried the
fair,
formula, John.
it was Evan Ponter as well. So you know, but Evan said he tried all sorts of different, and he's robustly tested that and said, yeah, unless obviously the only time you might change it. So the reason it works, I say, why does it work? Mark's gone, why does it work? It works because you don't change you don't change the created date of a record, right?
But
So hang on,
does that
is change false or is change true? Is change true. I've got it back to front. Is change true because
but
it's
does
the
that
only time the created date is changed. There you go.
but, but that get triggers on any other field gets changed on that particular record and not only on the postcode, but the entire record is because then you are unnecessarily forcing this call to go back to the postcode on each time when the some other fields also changed at that point in time. So even the create date changed will be changed for the record.
No, because the create date won't ever be changed on a record because a create date once it'll only ever be changed on new because the create date is static. Obviously, unless you do like a data upload and decide to override your create dates, but I mean, you're not going to do that in this context, right? In your active org that's there, you're not going to do that. You're only going to do that as part of a data migration.
Oh,
But another thing to mention, if you've played with platform events, I'm a huge fan of them, and platform events are a way that you can connect is changed or is new. In this case, is new fire a platform event. That platform event does the call out, and then the user isn't sitting waiting for record create to finish the call out.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, I
I'm
feel
loving
like
this new stuff.
Simon, I feel like you and Chris need to have a discussion, and then
Yeah, we
Simon
could.
needs to turn up. Simon needs to then. This all came. I swear this came out of me saying, Simon, go talk to so and so about this. I'm sure this is where this started. So now it's Simon, go talk to Chris, and then you could come back with like version 2. Like, yes, okay. Okay, everybody. Well, we're going to have to drop because we have to free up the Zoom ready for coffee chat, which is starting in a minute. So a big thank you to Simon for great flow thing, as always. Big thank you to Chris. Beth's already departed, but Chris will also say a thank you to Beth. And a big thank you to everybody for coming. I hope it was a good session for you all, even if it might have been a little overwhelming. Probably all need a little lie down now, right? Yeah, so and just a reminder that there's loads of events going on in London in June. So if you're coming to either London's Calling, the non-profit sprint, We'll Tour London, TDX London, or We'll Tour Agent Force TDX London all in one, whatever they're calling that thing. Yeah, hopefully I will catch you at one of those. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, and farewell.
But
Bye, everyone.